President Buhari turns the heat on 9 of his ministers who are seeking elective offices, gives them 5 days to resign from his cabinet. And on the same day, the appeal court delivers judgment on the contentious section of the Electoral Act which bars political appointees from participating in party primaries. It's a judgment that needs a clinical look, and we'll do that for you tonight. Hello and welcome to Politics Today. I'm Kayode Okikelu, live in the nation's capital, Abuja. Well, 2 major pronouncements today may have changed the course of the build-up to the 2023 elections. Now, one was from President Muhammadu Buhari, who is the head of the executive arm of government, and the other from the judiciary, all of them right here in the nation's capital. Let's break them down for you. At about noon today, the weekly Federal Executive Council meeting had just ended, but there was something amiss because some of the ministers in attendance were sort of wearing long faces. Well, thereafter, the government's spokesman, Mr. Lai Mohammed, the Minister for Information and Culture, broke the news. The president had just directed that all members of his cabinet running for elective office must submit their letters of resignation on or before Monday, May the 16th. Well, 9 of them had picked their party's forms for various offices. Majority paid the 100 million naira for the office of the president, 50 million for governorship. The National Assembly was between 10 and 20 million, except for the woman amongst them, Mrs. Pauline Talin, who got a discount and paid 3 million for her senatorial form. So, who are those expected to resign between today and Monday? Well, we have the list for you. They are the Minister of Transportation, Rotimi Amechi, the Minister of Niger Delta Affairs, Senator Godswill Akpabio, the Minister of Labour and Employment, Dr. Chris Ngige, and of course, Timi Silva, the Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, Ogbonaya Onu, Minister for Science, Technology and Innovation, and Emeka Wajuba, the Minister of State for Education. Well, all of them are running for president, but there are those running for other elective offices like the Minister of Justice and Attorney General of the Federation, Abubakar Malami, the Minister of State for Mines and Steel, Uche Oga, who are running for governorship positions, and Dame Pauline Talin, who declared her ambition to contest for the senatorial seat in Plateau State. So there you have the 9 members of President Muhammadu Buhari's cabinet who are expected to resign before Monday. And the natural next question is, who will be the first to take the plunge? Well, not too long after, the Minister of State for Education, Emeka Wajuba, tendered his resignation. This was confirmed by the Senior Special Assistant to the President on Media and Publicity, Mr. Garba Shehu. Over the past 3 months or thereabouts, Mr. Wajuba has had to deal with strikes in the nation's public tertiary institutions, spearheaded, of course, by academic and non-academic staff alike. In fact, today, yes, which of course was the day he resigned, the Academic Staff Union of Polytechnics declared a 2-week warning strike. So there you have it. A lot of action in that area. But let's head over to the opposition People's Democratic Party, PDP, where the party is holding its 96th NEC meeting today. And that's part of its drive to challenge the ruling APC at the polls next year. The meeting, which is expected to deliberate on the coming primaries and perhaps the possibility of zoning and consensus arrangement, was originally scheduled for 2 p.m., but it was postponed till 8 p.m., just less than 1 hour from now. And it's been reported that both the National Caucus and governors of the party are struggling to find a middle ground on the issue of zoning. And this may have affected the meeting of the Board of Trustees too. And all of this sort of pushed the NEC meeting forward. Keep in mind that the party's primaries will hold on May the 28th and 29th. So clearly, time is of the essence. Well, let's move on. Today's events, both within the ruling party, the president's cabinet, and the opposition, may just effectively decide the outcome of the 2023 election. So you might want to, mark this day in your calendar. And don't forget the pronouncement of the court I told you about. What a day. We have some valuable expert analysis for you on the program tonight. But first, let's bring you other top political stories. Here's our political roundup.
The national leader of the All Progressives Congress, Bola Tinubu, is urging party delegates to vote for credible candidate as the flag bearer of All Progressives Congress in the forthcoming party presidential primaries. The APC leader during his visit to Gombe State was received by Governor Inuwa Yahaya and later proceeds to the palace of the Emir of Gombe. Mr. Tinubu told the royal father that security and economic development of the country would be a major priority if voted in as president. He is also commending the traditional ruler for sustaining peace and unity among all ethnic groups in the state. The Edozie Njoku-led faction of the All Progressives Grand Alliance, ABGA, says it is taking over to reorganize the party following the Supreme Court judgment. The factional chairman of the party, Edozie Njoku, said this at a news briefing in Abuja when he called on members who have left the party to return. He called on Nigerians to identify with the party to win more seats in 2023 general elections. The national chairman of the party, Victor Oye, in a statement says the report of his removal is fake and should be dismissed by Nigerians. The Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, says it will finalize the regulations and guidelines for the conduct of the forthcoming elections latest by next week. The chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, disclosed this in Abuja during the second quarterly meeting with civil society organizations. Professor Yakubu says the commission has decided to suspend the online registration for permanent voters card in the next 3 weeks to enable online registrants complete their registration physically at the designated centers before the exercise is suspended on 30th June 2022. The Cross River State Governor, Professor Ben Ayade, has promised to fix the problems of Nigeria if voted in as president of Nigeria. He made the promise in Abuja after receiving the All Progressives Congress APC presidential nomination and expression of interest forms purchased for him by various groups, including Arewa youths. According to him, he understands the major challenges facing the country.
The wheels of progress in Nigeria has just begun to turn. As I will concentrate and engage Nigeria, I will engage them on the basis of what I've done, or not on promises, and not on statistics. I will do so with videos and pictures. So for those who don't know, would know. The longest dual carriage road ever constructed by a Nigerian governor is done by my humble self, the governor of Cross River State, with nothing.
3 presidential candidates of the All Progressives Congress today submit their presidential nomination forms. The aspirants are Bola Tinubu, Pastor Tunde Bakare, and Senator Ibikunle Amosun. In the meantime, the party has extended the deadline for submission till Friday, 13th of May.
Well, to better put in context the resignation of the Minister of State for Education, Mr. Mekan Wajuba, in fact, he resigned before this directive was given by the president. He's said to have resigned on April the 28th, which is the day he picked the form. So not exactly the first to take the plunge. Well, after the president's directive, he had done that way before. So just to better put this in perspective for our viewers. But let's get into the first conversation tonight. And I'd like to give you some more background to the conversation because you might need it. Well, today, the Abuja Division of the Court of Appeal gave a judgment on the appeal, which was filed over Section 8412 of the Electoral Act, which bars political appointees from voting or being voted for in party primaries. Well, the legislative arm had approached the court to set aside the March 18th judgment of the Federal High Court in Umuahia, Abia State. But things didn't go as planned when the 3-member panel headed by Justice Amabarka made 2 pronouncements. Now, this is where it gets interesting. One, that the Federal High Court of Umuahia had no jurisdiction to have entertained the case, as a plaintiff, Nduka Dede, lacked the locus standi to have filed a suit in the first instance. And 2, this is the other part you don't want to miss. The appellate court held that the provision is unconstitutional. In fact, it says it violates Section 42(1)(a) of the Constitution and denies a class of Nigerian citizens their right to participate in election. But don't forget, the president has asked his ministers to resign anyway. It may sound a bit tricky. And you know, there's a lot of questions around that, but we'll clear the fog. Our guest tonight is a senior advocate of Nigeria. He was called to bar in 1984 and has had an extensive legal practice with deep experience in litigation. In fact, he was a pioneer head of the law school in Enugu. He produced a draft for New Legal Practitioners Act in the country, as well as other legal instruments before the National Assembly. He's a professor of law who is widely published. Tonight, we're joined in our Abuja studio by Professor Ernest Ojukwu, Senior Advocate of Nigeria. Good evening, sir. Thank you for joining us.
Good evening.
Well, let's get into this, because this judgment by the appeal court is quite an interesting one. On the one hand, it voids the judgment of the Federal High Court in Umuahia. But then it seems to uphold some part of that same judgment as well. So can you help us break it down?
Surely, the decision from the media, because I've not read the transcript, the decision from, as we have read from the media, shows that the court decided that the plaintiff lacked local standard to bring the case, and so they struck out the case. Set aside the judgment from the Federal High Court. But on the other hand, they also gave an opinion on the constitutionality of that provision of the Electoral Act. That's what, from the media reports we have.
So, I mean, from what we have so far, as it stands, what is the fate of 8412 of the Electoral Act?
Even though the opinion was based on no issue, because they had already struck out or decided that there was no grounds to hear it at all. That opinion, having been made in a judgment, becomes the law. Yes, it is the law, because unless you set this aside, you have to, because they have already given us an idea what the courts want to decide.
But I see you're using the term opinion, not judgment.
Yes, when a court makes a decision that is not based on an issue for them to decide, we refer to it as a mere opinion, as what we call in law obiter, by the way statement. That's the kind of thing they have made there. But so it's not based on, because there was nothing before them anymore to decide. So it is off the record, so to say, in a layman's word. But we call it obiter. So it's a mere opinion, expressing your opinion. If you bring this case before us, we shall say that it's unconstitutional. That opinion, it contradicts the decision on locus.
This is a very interesting one, which is why we have you to really break it down for us. I mean, lawyers will say you can't build something on nothing. So, and you keep saying if this case were to be brought before them, but it wasn't brought before.
Because they said that it wasn't before them anymore.
So can you really build that on nothing, really, in that sense?
You can't. You ought not to. But the state of our law is that even when a court decision or opinion is, so to say, wrong, you still have a duty to obey it until you set it aside. So that opinion of the Court of Appeal actually destroys their judgment that said that the plaintiff lacked locus.
Okay, just to refresh the memories of our viewers, what exactly this 8412 is about, because that's been one, a lot of people probably know it, but just so we don't take this for granted, let's show you what section 8412 of the Electoral Act, which was signed by the President earlier in the year, says. And this is what that section says. It says, no political appointee at any level shall be a voting delegate or be voted for at the convention or congress of any political party for the purpose of the nomination of candidates for any election. So that is what the law says. But it's still quite curious, really, because some would say, well, the case really has been struck out. So it's as though there was no case in the first place. Is that right?
Yes.
There was no case challenging that in the first place.
Yes.
So some would lean and say, so as it stands, the law is still standing.
Yes, that's how it's supposed to be. In fact, the court was wrong to give that opinion. The court overreached in giving that opinion.
You think so?
It was very wrong of them to give that opinion. Now, we have rules of court that enjoins our judges to decide substantive issues together with preliminary issues that are raised, like challenge of jurisdiction, that if you have such a challenge of jurisdiction, you should decide both together. That's the general rules in our court rules. And based on that principle, if a court decides, because sometimes they may not want to, but if they decide to hear both the substantive matter and the preliminary issue together, they are advised to also say what they are finding on that substantive matter. The reason is to avoid delayed justice. Assuming the case goes on appeal and the appeal court sets aside their decision on the preliminary issue and say they were wrong, the normal thing the Court of Appeal would do would is to return the case back to that lower court to now hear the substantive one and make a decision. Now, having had the substantive one, courts are generally advised to give an opinion, decide that, say, what is found in that trial. Right. Because we don't want that case to return to you. It will delay trial. So that at least there will be a basis for the Court of Appeal to now hear that. Sure. Now, but the basis for that advice is in cases where there are substantive, real contentious trial where witnesses are called, especially between individuals and human, not government, where witnesses are called to try. You bring 10 witnesses to testify, like a contract tussle. Right. Why don't you say, based on these witnesses and what you have had so far, there's no contract for you, or you win. So that we don't return to the court again to begin to the same process. But not on constitutional interpretation. And courts have no right to say you don't have a locus and then go back to interpret the law for us.
So it's a bit confusing, right? But something else that we got from that judgment really is that now they're meant to approach the Supreme Court for some sort of interpretation. You have said ideally you should probably go back and start from maybe the scratch or approach things properly. But now it says escalate it to the Supreme Court for proper interpretation.
No, in this type of case, where the contention will just be mere interpretation of law, our appellate courts also have some powers to do that trial and interpret the law.
Which they may have done stylishly without opinion.
Not when they have already ruled that there's no locus. In fact, our courts have had, for some years now, we have had the habit of jumping into political issues to decide political issues. Well, all the things we learned in constitutional law is that the court should avoid.
But is this a core political issue or more of an electoral? In fact, some would even say it's a governance issue. It's a democratic issue, which is why you have the courts in any case.
They are all not democratic or governance issues, but this is a political matter. No single individual is involved, but there are some tussle. There's some tussle between groups of people in the political affair. And if you look at even the substantive decision itself, if the decision of the Court of Appeal was based on Section 42, 1A of the Constitution, they were also wrong. Section 42 talks about those who shouldn't discriminate against, and the Constitution lists those people in all the provisions of Section 42 on grounds of community. You shouldn't be discriminated on grounds of ethnicity, on grounds of sex, religion, or political opinion. There's nothing in that provision that says you should discriminate against somebody on grounds of political appointment.
This keeps getting interesting, Senior Advocate. But let's talk about the second leg, which you have talked about. And some will wonder, why will the Federal High Court in Umuahia entertain a case for which the person who is instituting that case, the plaintiff, doesn't have locus standi? It would seem as though the appeal court essentially said, you didn't do your job well. You didn't do due diligence for giving that. So it beats the mind. Why was that case entertained in the first place?
Well, judging is not a simple matter. If you sit down as a judge, you will find that you are actually on trial.
Even as a judge.
In fact, once you have a case before a judge, it's a judge that is now on trial. It's a big burden. And many times, and with their docket, large number of cases they have to try, many times, everywhere in the world, judges will depend on the lawyers, on the parties, what they have argued before them, to a great extent. They are not to go on their own research. And so if they have that, if in a particular case they were unable to remember to broaden their thinking in relation to the issues, they may make such mistakes. There were also decisions by other courts on that same subject matter, filed in other courts in Nigeria at the same time, and one or two of those courts held that the parties didn't have local standing. There were decisions like that.
It's quite interesting. So essentially the judge will decide based on what the lawyers present, generally, as much as possible.
As much as possible. That's why we need the parties to do the job very well.
So now that happened at the legislature, but then the president also made his pronouncement saying that those vying for elective offices in his cabinet should resign. How constitutional is that? Because it would seem the court is saying that provision in the Electoral Act is unconstitutional, so nothing should naturally bar these people from seeking elective office or participating in party primaries. But the president says, if you want to go that route, you must resign.
Yeah, the president is right now, but what I don't know whether he's right on his reasons. But we don't need a constitutional provision or a legislation to ask political appointees who are assisting an executive president to resign at this time, about a year to the next election, when they are going to go into tussles for the post through their primaries.
But the Constitution provides for some of that. We've seen Section 137, 182. Exactly. And if we could just take a look, just for the benefit of our viewers, Section 137, 1G of the Constitution. Now, this one talks about a person shall not be qualified for election to the office of president if being a person employed in the civil or public service of the Federation or of any state, he has not resigned, withdrawn, or retired from the employment at least 30 days before the date of the election. We're still just less than a year from the date of the election. So really, can't they still stay in office?
No. The political appointees, like the ministers, don't need any law to resign 1 year in advance once a decade they want to run for serious political positions like president, governor, senator. You see, these are the people appointed to carry out, execute the work of the thinking of the president. They're not just political appointees as such. The president didn't appoint them thinking that he was going to promote them on a political level. Right. He appointed them to go and serve me, go and work, and you suddenly come and say you want to go and change job. That means you are going to have conflict of interest. You're going to go pay attention on my job. So it does not require law for the president to fire them.
The Constitution does not expressly say. So if they actually stay in office, is it unconstitutional?
No, they shouldn't stay.
Is it unconstitutional if they stay in office?
It is not. Based on this decision today, it will not be unconstitutional for them to stay. Based on this opinion the Court of Appeal have rendered today, it will not be unconstitutional. But I hope that opinion will be set aside soon. But it's important to note that if the president does not fire them, and the president has the right to fire them, he can fire and hire.
Yeah.
Now, for example, the ASO strike we are talking about has been extended by another 3 months by ASO. And there are two very serious ministers that are in charge of helping that decision to be made. One, the Minister of Education, and two, the Minister of Labour.
This is the Minister of State for Education.
Yes, for Education, but he is in charge of that portfolio. And then the Minister of Labour, who is in charge of negotiation. Now, and you can see that both of them have not been paying attention to the ASO strike, because they have been bothering themselves with running around their political issues. And that's why you must have...
Even though they've held some meetings.
Well, sure, but you know, when you have something personal that conflicts with the public duty, you are going to face up. If you have health challenge, money challenge, post challenge, and you have a duty for the public, you are going to pay more attention to your own private interest. And that's one reason why they must go. And Wajoba, must applaud him, has shown a pathway, a disciplined example, that I can't concentrate on this my job anymore, because I'm ambitious now to be appointed, to get a political post. So I go. So the others must go. Otherwise, the president's work will come to a standstill. They should go so he can decide who and how he will manage the next 1 year. Because everybody is saying that a lot of problems in the country, security and so on, and these people are in charge. Attorney General is in charge of our entire legal system. He is the chief law officer. And how can he be running for governorship of a state, and he's still managing, helping us decide whether we're alive or dead?
You know, it's quite interesting when we discuss law, because lawyers will tell you, well, if it's not in the Constitution, you can't push the moral angle on me. I'm not going to sometimes go and argue the morality. It's the Constitution. So definitely there will be other sides to this, but I want to just get your, well, maybe not legal opinion, but as a Nigerian, as someone who is vast in this field, do you think now this is a test to know who is really in for this, who is trying, who has the best interests of the nation? Do you think this is a test to see who resigns and who does not resign?
Surely. You know, we use this word in Nigeria, tumbon. This is not a time for tumbon. Anybody who wants to lead us must show seriousness, and this is a test for that seriousness.
So can we say those who maybe don't resign?
Of course, they are playing with us. Those who don't resign are playing with us.
There's an issue I'd like to get your intervention on. It's a bit knotty as well, and that's the National Assembly's move to amend yet another part of the Electoral Act. That's Section 84.8. And this one is quite different. It talks about statutory delegates. And just for the benefit of our viewers yet again, so we're on the same page, we'd like to show you what Section 84.8 says as we wind down. Now, it says a political party that adopts a system of indirect primaries for the choice of its candidates shall clearly outline in its constitution and rule the procedure for the democratic election of delegates to vote at the convention, congress, or meeting. Now, the thorny part is that election of delegates. And apparently, it looks like they didn't make provision for statutory delegates. It just says you have to elect the delegates. What do you make of this, really?
They've amended it now. And they've now said they will be delegates. That's what I've just declared.
Now, the president has to assent to that.
He has signed it already.
So that's done.
Oh, it's gone. Because all of them suddenly found out, oh, we don't even have a right to vote for ourselves. So they have now woken up to protecting their own turf.
So these are the intrigues.
It's a private interest. They are purely private interest.
Well, I'm glad you've cleared the air on some of these issues, and I'm sure our viewers also appreciate that. But we'd like to thank you so much for your interventions. We'll be speaking with Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Professor Ernest Ojukwu. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Well, let's take a breather now, shall we? But here's what we have for you next. A continuation of our conversations with presidential aspirants. It's his second coming, and we'll be exploring the game plan of this technocrat turned politician. Professor Kingsley Moghalu is up next. Stay with us. Welcome back. Our next guest tonight is a political economist, a lawyer, former United Nations official who served as deputy governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria from 2009 to 2014. Well, he was a presidential candidate of the Young Progressives Party, that's YPP, in the 2019 election, and now is an aspirant on the platform of the African Democratic Congress, ADC, for the same office of the president. Professor Kingsley Moghalu is our guest on Politics Today tonight. Prof, it's good to have you on the program.
Thank you. Thank you, Kayode.
And, you know, I'll start with the post I saw that you put up on your Twitter handle just moments ago before the start of the show. And, you know, there was a quote on that graphic saying, Moghalu ready on day one. And that got me thinking, if you were elected president of Nigeria, what will be your first action in office?
My very first action in office will be to appoint the competent hands that will help me to govern. Nobody governs alone. So your first job is to select and name your team and put them in place. The second thing I would do is to send some very clear messaging to Nigeria, setting the tone of my administration and trying to unite the nation and to heal the nation, because I intend to run a transformational government that delivers a clear break between the past, with which we have been so disappointed, and the future. So
that we have about a year and 18 days to May the 29th next year. That's quite some time. And for you, you still have to go through the process of primaries in your party.
Of course.
The usual horse trading, the back and forth. And of course, there's a bigger one, which is the campaigning up till the election process. But on the day you picked your form, you said that
was yesterday.
Yes, yesterday. You said that it is time for technocrats to essentially take over power. I'm paraphrasing here, from career politicians. That was what you said. And that's going to be some huge task. And I'm wondering, what is your game plan, Prof?
Well, it depends on Nigerians. You see, you can hang yourself from a tree as a candidate. It doesn't matter. It's what the people think and what they want. If Nigerians feel that no light, ASU strikes, insecurity, joblessness and hopelessness of Nigeria's youth are the things they want, they can continue to vote for those that have brought us here. But it's also a choice that we can make as citizens to break away from the past and to say, look, for the future that we want, we need problem solvers. We need people who have been technocratic leaders and who are now political leaders. That way they can govern with competence if they are given the opportunity. So it's still, at the end of the day, a choice for Nigerians to make. But let me tell you one of the reasons I entered politics and why I'm running for president. I found out that as a technocrat, there are limits, and that no country can make any more progress beyond the competence or incompetence of its political leadership. That's where the thing is, at the elected political level, because that's what has the legitimacy given by the people. So we want now a situation where the people give you, or give me, hopefully, the chance to lead, and then you deliver the results, and they hold you accountable. That's what I'm talking about.
And convincing the people will be a lot of work.
That's a big job.
There's this saying,
we're ready for it.
Whether it's true or not, the devil you know is better than an angel you do not know. Whether or not it's true is another thing entirely.
That's one of the reasons people remain in failed relationships.
So the question is, just how well have you been tested?
Yes.
I mean, people will usually judge what you can do by what you have done. And that is perhaps the case for a lot of Nigerians. So how tested and trusted are you?
Very tested, very trusted.
I expected you to say that.
Let me explain.
Specifics.
Yes, very specific. One of the reasons we do not elect the right kind of leadership in Nigeria, let's take the presidency. Many voters do not even understand that the presidency is a job, just like any other job. And it has four main functions: national security, nation building, the national economy, foreign affairs. These are the four core functions of the president. On each one of these functions, I have been tested and have delivered and therefore trusted at a leadership level. Let's take the national economy, which is where you would probably start from, because that's what you know more.
So let's turn things around a bit. Let's start with national security.
Good. National security. As a United Nations official, I dealt with international security across borders in peace and security operations, in which I worked on intelligence, counterintelligence, and counterterrorism. Many people do not know this about me, but this is part of my career. So I have delivered. I understand what intelligence means. I understand what national security means. I understand also from the point of view of human security, the security of the stomach. Do young people have jobs? Do they have skills? That's part of what feeds the security crisis in this country. So let's separate national security. Let's move to nation building.
So let's still stay on security, because a lot of Nigerians will love to hear. I mean, especially those who've been seeing bandit attacks.
Just don't let me forget the other three.
No, definitely not. Okay. But security is a big deal now.
Yeah.
Hogging the front pages every day.
Yeah.
And we've seen attacks severally. Train attacks, attacks on airports, attacks on villages, kidnappings. We're still dealing with one, the Abuja Kaduna train attack. We're still trying to rescue the kidnapped victims. So security is a very important one. And I'd like to know, because Nigerians, part of the reasons they elected President Buhari was because he had a security background. You know, a war general. I'm going to land. Yeah. And they thought, you know what, maybe this is a person that will fix our security challenges. You know, we had the Chibok incident and all of that. But some of these challenges remain today. So specifically now, because hopes were high at that point, what would you do to fix security?
Well, what I would do, first of all, I would bring very strong political will to securing Nigeria and Nigerians.
What does that mean,
political will? Means that losing one life will be too much for me. Not to talk about losing hundreds, not to talk about thousands of Nigerians dying on, just within short periods of time. So when
if one life is lost, pardon me, are you going to resign, or
no,
how do you mean?
What I mean by having political will is, first of all, I will be very proactive in the matter of insecurity. I will not wait. I'll take the battle to the bad guys as the president of this country. And I will not wait for them to strike and then I come back and write the book of lamentations. No. So political will leads to pro-action, not reaction. I will not wait for Nigerians to be killed and then I make statements. No, we will try to secure our territory. Number two, you need intelligence. Intelligence is very important in maintaining security. You have to have intelligence, you have to have your intelligence agencies working in a coordinated way, and you have to use intelligence, which comes back to political will. You may know what's going wrong, but you may not have the fortitude to do what you should do. Maybe because, for whatever reason, you see, but no reason is as important as the lives of a Nigerian. So these are some of the things. Then you have the matter of the police force, which needs to be completely revamped and reformed to secure this country.
In what way?
You can't secure this country. The police force is just 250 people, 250,000 people. That's too few. Go to Egypt. Their police force is almost 1 million. So we have to put more men and women and train them. It's not just bodies or numbers of police force, but they have to be trained. They have to be equipped. Their mindset has to be changed. If they had a different mindset, we would not have had NSAS.
And you know, these solutions
you don't shoot citizens, but you're not shooting and wiping out the people who are killing citizens.
And let me link this now to the point you made about taking the battle to them. And I'll be specific now, because yes, we can talk about those issues, but there are things that affect Nigerians. Yes. Take, for example, some of the kidnappings we have seen. Yes, and there's been this dilemma. Should we negotiate and rescue them? Should we take the battle for them? Some have said, bombard those forests. Yeah. What would have been your call if you were the president of Nigeria?
First of all, even the army needs to be strengthened. We need to go into the forests and take control of our territory. You must take the battle to the enemy.
What about collateral damage in this case?
Well, you manage the risk of collateral damage. Do citizens live in forests? Terrorists are living in all these forests.
But abducted victims are in the forest.
Well, there are ways to rescue victims. We watch it in the movies, and we've seen it done in many countries. That's what I talk about, upgrading and also using technology. If we use technology effectively, I think we can be far more proactive against terrorists.
So let me take you to the field you enjoy talking about, and that's, of course, the economy.
We can talk about nation building too, which is very important.
Definitely we would. But let's talk economy. Then we'll just take it, you know, as we move on. And I'd like to know just how aware are you of the kind of economy that, if you are elected, will be handed over to you? Just how aware of the challenges are you?
Well, I think you're asking that question rhetorically. That's what I assume. As a former deputy governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, I think you should assume I am aware of what's going on in the economy. I can see it like every other citizen. Now, if you're in government, there's information that comes to you that you may not have when you are a citizen. Then you make assumptions. So based on what I know, and based on some assumptions I can make based on what I know, I think this economy is in extremely bad shape.
So you're saying you don't exactly have the clearest of pictures?
You can't have 100%, but I know, like every other citizen, I go to the market, inflation is very high. I know that many millions of Nigerian youth are unemployed, so I don't need to be inside government to know that.
Let's talk about three indices, as it were.
But for example, the books of the Nigerian government, you cannot know it if you are not inside.
Okay, so let's talk unemployment first.
Yes, absolutely.
What is our current unemployment rate?
It's about 33%, and it's one of the highest in the world. Now, youth unemployment is about 54%.
So how do you plan to bring it down?
Yes. Now, there are a number of ways we will create jobs. What you do, the government doesn't create jobs. The government creates an environment that creates jobs. I intend to establish a 1 trillion naira venture capital fund. One of the things this fund will do is that, first of all, we will give temporary unemployment support to young people coming out of universities, you know, for 6 months, maybe max 1 year, but on the condition that they go through skills training. This venture capital fund will give young people funds to start new businesses based on their skills.
Like how much are you looking at to empower them with?
That is a matter for the fund itself to determine. So the president will not run the fund.
We know, for example, the 774,000 jobs and how much Nigerians are being paid. There's been a lot of controversy. Are you going to pay above that, considerably above that, or still stay within that?
I don't understand. 774 what?
The 774,000 jobs. You've heard about it across local governments.
That's
the Special Works Scheme by the Ministry of Labor. So the question is, would yours be above what they're currently being paid, or
most likely would be above, because this is going to be a private sector driven fund. It's not going to be a government run fund. The government will invest. Hold on. The government will invest in the fund. Private sector people will invest in the fund, and they will give people. Everybody in Nigeria does not need 5 million to start a new business. There are people for whom 100K can help them start a hustle. There are people for whom 500K is enough. So it is according to the application, according to what people need for the business or creative venture they want to start. That's how the fund will respond to them. So yeah.
How is it then different from, because a lot of people want to judge as well. We've seen the anchor borrower scheme, the trader money, the farmer money, and how is yours going to be different? Because I'm sure you've learned from this one.
If all those schemes were so successful, we would not have the high unemployment we have in this country today. We would not have the poverty rate we have in this country today. You must judge actions or policies by their success on the ground. And the reality that is facing us is that this country is economically collapsing. Forget about what people tell you on TV or propaganda. That's not what I'm here to talk about. We know that many young people graduate from schools, and for years they have no jobs. So that's the point I'm trying to make. The reason I will be different as a president is that I will come at the Nigerian economy from a place of knowledge, from a place of experience in economic management, and from a place of an empirical approach to managing the economy, and from a place of philosophy. Oh yes, you have to. There's no economy that can be successful if it's not philosophically anchored.
Like a national ethos?
Not just a national ethos. I'm talking about, for example, capitalism. What type of capitalism are you running? There are several types. There's welfare, there's state capitalism, there's crony capitalism, there's entrepreneurial capitalism. I recommend, as I always say, a mixture of entrepreneurial capitalism for Nigeria mixed with some welfare, especially for the aged citizens, social security. You know, so you must be philosophically clear so that you can make policy that is consistent. Because, let me finish that thought, if you don't mind.
No, go ahead.
You see, creating wealth, there is a science to it. You know, there's some sort of knowledge that goes into how to create wealth. You don't just sit in government and expect that your country will become wealthy if you don't understand what you're doing. So if you want to run a free market economy with government oversight, what you do is that there are three things you must address: property rights, innovation, and capital. So if we follow this scientifically and we have competent people running the economy, and as a president, I will definitely appoint the best economic minds and the best economic hands. Then you have a higher chance of success at creating jobs and creating wealth.
When you spoke about science, scientifically, a lot of people have said, Nigeria defies science, defies textbook. I mean, we're
not talking about textbook.
Deficit financing, for example, deficit budgeting, and it looks like, hey, this is how it's meant to work in the textbook, but for Nigeria, we're defying all the odds. But let's move this further, because we have quite a number of places to cover. And still a bit on economy. Some of the indices people use to judge our economy is the exchange rate, for example.
Yes, that's right.
I mean, you were in the Central Bank of Nigeria, and I'd like to know, are you comfortable with the monetary policies and the direction you have seen from the current Central Bank of Nigeria?
No, I'm not, and I've said it very clearly.
So what would you have done differently?
Central Bank, what do you mean? What did I do differently as a Central Bank Deputy Governor? That's what I would do. We would run the Central Bank professionally. I wouldn't be running for president if I was a sitting Central Bank Governor. That's one of the things I would do, or not do, because that's one of the things that is creating a problem for the Nigerian economy. Investors have no confidence in an institution that is supposed to be impartial, apolitical, whether in regard to the markets or in regard to the government. I would not lend the government of Nigeria 18 trillion naira, breaking every law that exists in the books. So if you ask me what I would do differently, there are many things I would do differently, and therefore we would likely have a better economy.
So this is about the exchange rate?
Yes. Right. You see, the exchange rate is also a function of how productive the economy is in terms of value-added goods and exports. So if you rely only on oil, then if oil has problems, your exchange rate will have problems, you see? So there are several issues that are involved in Forex. And one of them is a matter of whether or not the economy is diversified. And I have some ideas about exactly how to diversify the Nigerian economy. And it comes back to the matter of innovation. It comes back to the matter of industrial policy. It comes back to the matter of what incentives we create for exports rather than imports.
Okay, let's talk nation building.
And it comes back to whether you create opportunities for arbitrage. Where the central bank becomes too strong in the market, then you're creating opportunities for arbitrage. Okay. Those who have connections will do well. Those who don't will suffer. All
right, let's try to move fast because of our time.
Sure.
So, I mean, nation building now.
Yes.
You were in the eastern region. I think you were about 4 years old or
yes, I was a child.
during
the Biafra War.
The Biafra War.
Yes,
and I mean, you stayed for a bit, and this must have influenced you in a lot of ways. Now, there are different opinions about how to unite the nation, bring together the agitations, and really make us one united nation. How do you plan to do that?
Yes, in two very practical ways. The first is that I will govern Nigeria as its president, based on equity and justice. You know, what you do for this child, try also to do for the other child. Don't discriminate between people based on ethnicity or based on religion. No. So, you know, justice and equity is a very important part of nation building. The second thing about building a nation, healing a nation like Nigeria that is broken by ethnic and tribal divisions, is transparency. I will have no hidden agenda as president. As you see me, that's what I am. I'm here to govern this country and make life better for Nigerians. And you will see it in all my actions.
So you'll say it as it is?
I'll say it as it is, and I will be open and transparent. You know, I think that helps to build confidence in the leadership, because what it does is that it creates trust. So creating trust between the government and the governed is a very important part of nation building.
And part of the agitations, especially from the southeast, is, you know what, let all the candidates pull together, throw their weight behind one single candidate. And there have been names mentioned, maybe a Peter Obi, maybe even yourself. But is that something you are willing to, submit to?
Well, we see all this talk about consensus, not just in the southeast, but we saw some leaders of the southwest, political leaders, all the contenders met the other day. Did they come out with a consensus candidate?
No, particularly for the southeast.
Okay,
really saying that
it
is time.
Yes.
That's been the the southeast has not had a shot at the president, especially.
Absolutely.
So there is more clamor, as it were.
Yes.
And some will say it's justifiable.
Well, look, we're in a democracy. If candidates decide to create a consensus among themselves, then it works, because they have the political will to step down for one another based on any number of factors. But if they don't, then you go through the democratic process. That's how it should work.
So all this, withdrawing or falling behind a candidate is not for you?
Well, I've been in politics in Nigeria now for a few years, and I know that achieving consensus is a very difficult thing. It's
very tricky.
Yeah, it's very tricky, and that I can tell you.
You got 21,886 votes with YPP, so they say. Well, that's from INEC, which your party is registered under anyway. How many votes are you targeting this time around?
I'm targeting to win. However many votes it takes to win, that's what I'm looking for. If it's 20 million votes, that's what I'm looking for. If it's 25, that's what I'm looking for.
That's quite ambitious, 25 million votes.
Ambition is made of stern stuff. Yes.
Okay, so let's wind down on this, because you come across as, open person.
Yes.
And I'd like to know, if these promises you have made, if you fail to achieve them,
are you
the kind that will say, you know what, I didn't meet this, I'm resigning?
Yes, I'll have the fortitude, if I fail, to resign. Why not? I mean, the government is not my father's property. If I fail to deliver what I promised to deliver, or at least 70–80% of it, you may not deliver 100%, whoever does. But you should aim to deliver at least 80% of what you promised. If you fall short and deliver 70, that's fine. For me, if I deliver below 70, then I'm not happy with myself. So, but let me tell you why I will not fail. And this is a very important point I want to make.
30 seconds, if you can.
As president, I will govern through largely 4 units in my presidency: strategy, There will be an Office of National Strategy. There will be the National Office of Risk Management. There will be the Office of Performance Management. And there will be the Office of Talent Management.
Right.
This is how you govern for transformation.
Prof, we have to run now. Clearly, we have more days to explore these issues. Affairs. Definitely. But we've tried to cover at least some. I would like to thank you so much, really, for joining us. Just a day after you picked your form.
Yes.
We wish you the very best. We've been speaking with Professor Kingsley Moghalu, who is vying for the #1 seat in Nigeria. Thank you so much, Prof, for your time.
Thank you very much. I think Nigerians, they must, if they want a better life,
right,
it's time to go for something new, something different, something bold.
Well, we have to run now. But we'll be back tomorrow with more fresh political stories for you. Until then, I'm Kayode Okikiolu. To have a wonderful night rest and stay with Channels Television, your home for the news. Good night.